Hi there, Greg Brail from Sonoa Systems again, talking from Santa Clara, California. We took over the office of our CEO so that we can send him out to go get some more business while we can talk about some API stuff. Want to talk about one of the things that API companies, API providers really often have to struggle with, which is the concept of visibility. If you're running a website, you probably use Google Analytics. You probably have some website logs that you scrape. If you're part of a larger company, you may have some sort of business dashboard. You have to have some idea who's using your IT systems and what they're using them for. That's the concept of visibility. Once you're putting a web services API onto the internet for usage by all kinds of people, they may be paying customers, they may be free people, they may be people in Finland running on the internet on their laptops, you need to think about how are you going to answer questions about your API. You can put the thing out there. You can then have your API sit there and you can just have people hammer it all day and you may have a lot of fun. But if you want to try and make money on it, or if you want to try and have an idea of who's using it so you can serve them better, whether you care about making money or not, it's really useful to have visibility. And some of the questions I think people find themselves asking is who? Who's using my API? That's where the whole concept, in the API world, you've probably seen the concept of an API key. We're going to talk about security later, but an API key is basically a very straightforward authentication mechanism. It just says, here who's using the API. I don't really care if they share the API key with someone else. I don't need strong authentication. It's not for security. It just gives you visibility into who's using your API. Obviously, you can then do things like sign usernames and passwords. You can use OAuth, and we'll talk about that later. But you need to somehow identify who's using your API. If nothing else, you can always use the IP address, although web people know that IP addresses don't always tell you the truth. They may tell you that everybody from Citibank.com is working on the same IP address, but it gives you an idea. Once you know who, you want to know some other things. You want to know how much. How much are they using your API? What part of your API are they using? Depends on how you structured your API. If it's a REST-style API, it may go by URL. You may need to look at query parameters to figure out what they're doing. You may need to actually look inside the XML content, parse the XML, figure out what was requested for. The more you can know about how much they're using your API, again, the better you can serve them. You also want to know how fast. Talking about latency, tremendously important today. I think Google figured out that every second of latency on their search results subtracts millions of dollars, if not more, from their bottom line. It affects your API as well. Your API is going to get used a lot more if you return results in 100 milliseconds or 500 milliseconds than if it takes you 5 or 10 seconds. Are you tracking that? Do you have a way of finding out not only how fast is my API, but how fast are users seeing my API? Do you have some way that'll tell you, user Scott is getting really slow response time today. Is it his fault? Maybe there's something about his account. Maybe there's something we did wrong, and our most important users are getting the worst response time. That's a really horrible situation to be in. And finally, your API, you're doing your API for a reason. You're not just putting it out there to have fun. You're trying to drive business to a site. You're trying to enhance your brand. You're trying to provide a valuable service. Maybe you're even charging per API call. Well, you want to somehow link that to your business. Do you have enough information in your API that can tell you not only what's happening at the technology level, what's happening at the business level? Maybe your API is being used to place orders. How many orders did you receive? Maybe people use it to pursue some sort of catalog or look up what services you offer online. What are the most commonly queried services? How often are they querying them? What country do the people live in who are using your API? All this stuff can help your business. We're not saying that API analytics is necessarily going to help you figure out what your profit and loss is or what your next business strategy is. But the more you can link that API analytics to your business, the more effective your API can be. So what we're really talking about here is you've got an API. How do you find out what it's doing so you can make it a better API and you can have it more effectively help your business? And at Sonoa, we're in the business of helping people figure those questions out.